Hawaii has only had 2 Republican governors since statehood in 1959. With no incumbent running and well-known candidates running on both sides of the aisle, will 2022 be the year that a 3rd Republican gains the state's highest political office? In all, 10 GOP candidates will be on the ballot this summer. Join us as we talk with Republican contenders ahead of the August 13th primary election. Tonight's live broadcast and live stream of Insights on PBS Hawaii start now.
Aloha and welcome to Insights on PBS Hawaii. I'm Yunji Denise. The state of Hawaii will elect its 9th governor this fall as David Ige's 2nd term comes to a close. In all, 10 Republican candidates are running for governor, and tonight we will hear from several of them as they look to represent the party on November's ballot. Will 2022 be the year Hawaii's 3rd Republican governor gets elected? We look forward to your participation in tonight's show. You can email or call in your questions, and you'll find a live stream of this program at pbshawaii.org and on the PBS Hawaii Facebook page. Our guest tonight will be joining us via Zoom. Kelini Kahau was born and raised in Nanakuli and is the mother to 10 children, along with stepchildren as well. She works as a federal postal judge under the jurisdiction of the Universal Postal Union. Gary Cordery is an entrepreneur and a businessman. He started Kingdom Builders in 1998 and in 2020 founded the Aloha Freedom Coalition, which advocates for personal freedoms and government transparency. Lynn Mariano was born and raised in Kalihi Palama. He retired from the Army in 1995 with 2 Bronze Stars. He served as the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command Program Manager and owns a financial planning business. Paul Morgan started his own business consulting company in 2020 after many years as an independent insurance broker. This Kailua Kona resident was a running back at Vanderbilt University in Tennessee, where he graduated in 1998. BJ Penn, Duke Iona, and Heidi Suniyoshi declined to participate tonight. Also on the ballot are George Hawat, Moses Paskowitz, and Walter Woods. Thank you all for joining us tonight. I think we have plenty to get to. Mr. Mariano, I want to start with you and the issue of housing. Tell us, to start, what do you think the governor can do to address the issue of housing in our state, and what specifically would you do to alleviate this issue?
Well, thank you for that question. The housing problem has been really rearing its head for the last 5 to 7 years. But it's been an ongoing problem for the past 6 decades. I remember when I was growing up, I lived in Kalihi Palama, and the housing was kind of a challenge, back then. So what I would do is I would go back and change and look at the laws that we currently have in the books. Make it more user-friendly, particularly for builders and also, investors. And so that one of the things we need to do is we need to ensure that the permitting process, it shouldn't take 8 years to build affordable housing. And let's really call it what it is. Affordable housing, as we're calling it, is really not affordable housing. It really is for low-income housing. The affordable housing that I'm kind of what I'm focused for is for the middle class. Those who are making $100,000 up to $150,000. That middle class is something that we need to kind of take care of. I sat on an Ala Moana Kaka'aka neighborhood board. I looked at all of the housing and things that we have. The state has lots of land, not only here on Oahu and everything Oahu-centric, but we need to build it, with the other islands and the inner island. So as governor, I would go ahead and tap into that, work with the county mayors, look at some of the state lands that's on the different islands, expand that, tie that in by bringing in the super ferry so that we can have more Ohanas being visited to each other going back and forth. So there's lots of things to do, a lot of problems, but again, just a short answer. Thank you.
Mr. Cordery, what's your take on this issue?
Angie, thank you, and PBS, thank you for hosting this event. It's fantastic. I am a contractor, I'm not a politician, so I understand these dynamics quite well. Underlying the problem is you have this problem of supply and demand. The idea that the state only has 5% of its property developed really undermines and underwrites the real problem. What we're seeing now is the consequences of bad policy over decades. Lynn mentioned a moment ago. What we have is you have the LNR actually with bad policy development and to live on their own lands. This affects not only the public sector, but the private sector, acquiring homelands. All aspects of housing are impacted by bad government policy. In Hawaii, it's the most regulated state in the nation. If you want to bring a project to the forefront, it's almost impossible to get it done within 1, 2, 3 years. So the cost of construction is making it nearly impossible for builders to be profitable. Without a profitable business, people won't invest. You won't see the projects you want to come into the market. It's an issue of reappointing policymakers in DLNR and working with them to open up more lands, reduce taxes, regulations, getting a permit. All these are components of bad housing policy, and it will turn. It will take time. It will take a new direction, but we'll see the turn and more units come into the marketplace.
Mr. Morgan, what's your take? What do you think the governor can specifically do to address the housing issue in Hawaii?
Well, the first thing is, would all of us agree that we're in a crisis as far as affordable housing, or just housing in general? Speaking with a real estate agent last night, he thought, from his perspective, that was approximately need of 65,000 units that's needed on Oahu, many more when you combine it across the state. So because we're in this state of emergency, it's just simply utilizing the powers of the governor in order to bring in those resources from the federal and from the state government in order to activate on SB 2583, which is just opening up more public lands. And as part of my administration, we're going to work with school, churches, nonprofits, associations to actually take charge of those lands to provide housing for their membership. You take the teachers' unions where they're paying money for dues. They get the insurance for their life, but let's talk about other ways that we can help those teachers as well. And having them just a nonprofit, which will be able to acquire funding from USDA and some other federal programs, and utilizing our own National Guard and assistance from the Army Corps of Engineers, we'll be able to lower that overhead of simply pushing off dirt to the point of we utilize our local developers, unions, in order to build up from the foundations up. That alone would just decrease the overhead of this housing crisis that we have. And from that perspective, it's taking advantage of those communities so that you have everything from local community gardens to be able to help support the need from farming to some of the opportunities that these organizations that are already set up to help people, from the nonprofits, 501c3s, the schools and the churches, it's just simply utilizing the resources that we have on the ground that keeps us within the 3 values of not increasing the overhead of the state, not causing people to think they're going to lose their jobs, and what's in the best interest of the people of Hawaii.
Ms. Kahau, what are your thoughts on this issue? How can the governor specifically work to help alleviate the housing crisis that we're now in?
Well, my expertise are in contracts, so I'm going to go straight to the Jones Act, because we have the land. The land is there and it's open. The Jones Act is a contract that hurts the financial stability in Hawaii, because it's the imports and as contractors, we can get the contractors there, and the land is always going to be there. It's the contract that is on the land, and it's the foreign investors. We gotta stop the foreign investors buying up the lands so that we can, as the people of Hawaii, can have these lands that are open so that we can build. And why do I bring up the Jones Act is because that is where it hurts the economy. It hurts the business people, contractors. It hurts the people that need to buy the house or need to even rent the home. So we need to do something about this Jones Act, either amend it or abolish it and do something, because at some point you gotta get this root out, and this root is the Jones Act. Because as far as the teachers are concerned, our contractors that come in, to build the homes, the families, and it doesn't hurt any of the unions. We just need the support of the unions, because it'll open up more jobs, and it'll actually make Hawaii a port where we can be sustainable. We can do the farming, we can have more businesses, and we can have more jobs. And we also will make Hawaii a Pacific hub for the states. So as far as the land is concerned, it's there. The government now just doesn't support the Hawaii people. It only supports people that are incoming. which is the foreign investors. It put financial liens on the land so that no one can utilize it, and then they bring in foreign investors, foreign contractors, all of these foreign people, which doesn't help Hawaii's economy.
I want to get to another question, and Mr. Cordery, I'll start with you. Housing aside, what do you think is the biggest issue facing our state right now?
That's a good question. There's so many. You know, I made this list when I first decided to run. What is the biggest and most important issue? You know, whether it be housing or healthcare, education, cost of living, all these are very important in Hawaii. I began to think more and more about it. Why is it year over year we can't seem to get any progress in any of these issues? And it occurs to me, and I really believe it's so, that the issue that faces Hawaii the most is corruption. The fact that politicians cannot actually move progress, cannot make decisions, cannot appoint people to positions that will actually create policies to address all of these issues. If you're in a part of the legislative piece now, there's stakeholders vying for your attention, vying for your allegiance on a regular basis. And what you see is people getting just moved from department to department, from agency to agency. So you never actually have somebody who's willing to say, no, this is what we need to do. Let's do this, because there's too many hands in the cookie jar, if you will. So corruption is undermining the ability for people to walk in liberty and to think clearly and be able to engage new ideas and bring new things into the marketplace and solve problems. The idea of being able to go to the mainland as an example and just replicate what's being done there. Use wisdom. Look around. Look and see what's working in other municipalities, other states, and bring that wisdom here to Hawaii. But that threatens the status quo. Bringing in new people and new ideas and new information into the marketplace. Sometimes it threatens revenue streams. And that's why there's so much resistance to change. People like the things the way they are. They don't want change. But change is required, because what we've seen is decades of the same. Now we're at a tipping point. So if we deal with corruption from the head, if you actually deal with it from the Attorney General's office, you actually is elected by the people, you can begin to address corruption, because the governor appoints the governor, and he appoints the sheriff, he appoints the judges, that's the Supreme Court. They pick the elections commission, they pick the ethics commission, and so you have no accountability in government. So when somebody wants to step forward, they get the pressure that everybody's already engaged in place. So I think if we can address corruption, then we can be able to address these issues. So from a structural consideration, I think corruption is the number one most important thing.
Mr. Mariano, do you agree that corruption is the biggest issue facing our state, or is there something else that you would identify?
Well, I would agree. Corruption is one of the major factors that's there. There's many other things. I think Ms. Kahau mentioned the Jones Act, which maybe sometime later I'll get an opportunity to address. But there's a plethora of things that's going on, and it's not coordinated. And the biggest issue that I see is that our leaders right now and in the past really have no plan. And all they're doing is they're placating to special interest groups. And you can just see them just by every year that they're running for office, or every other year whenever they're running for office. It's the same old, all talk. Listen to the people for about 3 months after they get into office, and then they forget about it. So the corruption is one, but the real big issue that they have here is affordability. Second, we're in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, and Hawaii needs to be sustainable. We need to be self-sufficient. We have hurricanes, we have lots of different types of disaster. I bring over 40 years of experience in emergency management, and also as in the military, and I kind of look at the plans. So anytime we take an operations, we need to have a plan. Then you need to have options on how you're going to execute those plans. And so I plan on working with the individuals that's in there, set up with organizations and committees, particularly for each of the departments, and then come down and do a real drill down root cause analysis and finding out what are the issues that's really concerning them. I have a 70% solution, but I need more help, and I do that. And my experience of working with government, as I went around the country doing counterterrorism exercise in
We have the questions flowing in, so I want to get to these issues in just a moment. But first, let's hear from the two others. Ms. Kahau, what are your thoughts on what's the biggest issue facing our state?
Well, I'm gonna agree with Lynn that, these officials have no plan. And, it is corruption, but their plan is to be corrupt and not to help the people. They want to lead and not serve the people. You can be a leader and serve the people at the same time, but you have to have a plan when you step into office. And when you step into this position, it is to not just to serve, but it's to fix what has been broken all these years. 60 years is a long time, and our people are suffering. There's a lot of suffering, and we have a lot of corruption. I like to, like I've been always saying, there's a civil FOIA, which is for the people to get information and to go up against officials in the office. But to hold them really accountable is the Foreign Agent Registry Act. And Hawaii has not adopted that. All the other states have done that. And why hasn't Hawaii done that? I have no clue. Because I was one of them that went up against officials. And I couldn't do anything else. I couldn't do anything else but just hold them at bay and get a slap on the hand. So yes, corruption is one of them, and not having a plan. And as governor, I do have a plan. I've always had this plan. I've shared my plan, and everyone walked away from it. And the reason why I shared it is because it's for the people. Everything is for the people, not just myself or my family. It's for everyone in Hawaii. So yes, corruption and having a plan and spearheading that plan needs to be a major key, and having people that also wants to fix the corruption and make sure that these plans work out for all of us the best.
Mr. Morgan, let's get your take on what you think the biggest issue is facing our state right now.
Angie, I believe corruption is a tremendous part of it, but there's a simple fix to it. It's simply, being a catalyst for change in the state, and that's just simply having exit interviews of the current administration from a department deputy agent in the departments down to the employees to know what the inconsistencies are from budgeting to expenditures. But more importantly, I believe education is the main issue in Hawaii, and just simply not knowing the tremendous opportunities that we have as a state, and being able to utilize the resources of the schools, partnering with nonprofits to make available programs nights and weekends for schools, to be able to assist parents in that tremendous overhead of childcare. Kids are in a safe place. So just being able to apply the resources that are available in the state in a way that it benefits all of the people of the state of Hawaii. So just taking that perspective of, yes, corruption is up there. The simple fix is to have those exit interviews, to interview those employees who know about the inconsistencies from budgeting to expenditures, and then eventually fixing it with education. Education in a way that comes from the governor's office to the deputy director heads, to knowing that our employees in the state are educated on what their jobs are. I mean, we have 3 examples of instructions. We have 3 versions of the constitutions from the federal down to the Kingdom of Hawaii, and also being able to utilize policy and procedures, SOPs. If they don't work, it's simply from the department head to that deputy director in order to what will be the best practices for those departments. So education.
Okay. I want to get to some of the viewer questions, and thank you for those of you who are writing in and calling our hotline tonight. Let's talk about 2 recent Supreme Court issues. One question here tonight is about guns, and the other is about abortion. So let's start with abortion. Susan is asking, what is each candidate's position on abortion rights? Ms. Kahau, let's start with you.
With 10 children, I don't like anybody telling me about what I should do with my body. So I don't want to have anyone be told what to do with their body. I'm pro-life. But at the same time, we need to be mindful of certain things. And I'll give you an example. In my 4th pregnancy, actually my 4th pregnancy, the doctor wanted to abort my child. And And I was like, no, I'm not going to. And the reason why is because I was sickly. And I was like, just because I'm sickly, you're gonna abort my child. I didn't want. That was my choice. See, so we need to still have choices. So we cannot you cannot talk about constitution and law and people's rights and then say abortion is okay or you cannot have an abortion or you can. So we need to have a balance in certain things because I still believe that whether it was consensual or rape or incest, that baby needs to come to earth. You know, I believe that we need to have an avenue for women and even men to understand that what their worth is in their bodies, understand these things. So if a woman was raped or has gotten pregnant by incest, we need to have some kind of avenue to help them in therapy because even with that, even saying that to have an abortion because you're sickly, okay, different story, but if the woman wants to have it, we need to find out what's going on psychologically. Or
Okay.
even if it's financially, we need to create a path to help that woman and or those parents. Maybe it's two couples. You know, we don't know the situation. Every situation is different. We still need to have something there to provide for them.
Miss-
And you know, not everybody thinks the same as I do. Not everybody understands. But I believe that we still have a middle ground. Because even God, like as a Kanaka and as a Christian, we still have choices. And those choices is not for us to judge. It's not for us to say, you cannot do this or you can. It's for us to create a path so that others can have a balance at the same time. Because I don't like people telling me what I can and cannot.
Mr. Morgan, let's get to you on this. What do you say to Susan tonight, your position on abortion rights in the state of Hawaii?
I'm actually pro-life myself, and I'm fortunate. I was actually, my mom was 17 when she had me, and I thank God that she didn't abort me because I love my life and I love the relationships that I have in this world. But just from a perspective of working from child protective services, juvenile probation, and actually working in prison, having that education piece in place to work with kids and to help them with future decisions of eventually becoming parents if they so choose to, that's a responsibility, I believe, of the community. As far as in the field, boots on the ground, knowing the two different extremes of it, the person who was raped and incest, like Helene just mentioned, having resources available to help those people, you have the Plan B option, but as far as when the actual life and the heartbeat of the child begins, that's when I don't agree with it. So knowing that the other extreme of it is the person who utilizes abortion as contraception, we need to have some things in place from a state perspective to assist people in the event that an unlicensed physician or just a person is performing some services on people that's not in anyone's best interest. So being able to have policy in place to assist people who need resources, my perspective again is I'm pro-life.
I want to just alert the viewers. Apparently, we're having a few audio problems on the broadcast, so we do apologize to that tonight. If you are having some audio problems, the live stream is fine on the Facebook page or on our website. You can always watch it there as well, so we just want to let you know that. Mr. Mariano, I want to go to you on this. What do you say to Susan tonight, your position on abortion?
Susan, thank you for that question. I am pro-life as well. You know, my Catholic upbringing and also now Christian, you know, I believe in pro-life. But you know, Hawaii has one of the strictest abortion laws that's on the books. You know, the people have spoken in 1973, and they put that on the books. So, you know, one of the oaths that I will take, not only to support and defend the Constitution of the United States, but also support and defend the Constitution of Hawaii, and that encompasses the laws. So with that, you know, I have my own personal belief. I believe in pro-life and the sanctity of life, you know, from inception all the way to death. And so, but the people have spoken. So because there is that, I will work with the legislature as governor to try to modify or change the laws to make it more pro-life, to give the opportunity for women and men to get spiritual counseling, guidance counseling, and some of the things that Planned Parenthood should be doing, and just kind of enforce that. You know, we're in the middle of the Pacific, so we don't have the luxuries to go and drive across state lines or across counties, particularly women that have a need for an abortion. So we don't want to have coat hanger abortions in a backyard, something that's not safe. And so there are some things that's already set up in Hawaii. So as governor, I want to ensure that even though I don't agree with it, you know, we need to change the law, because if that's the choice that's finally made, then it needs to be carried out in a safe environment. You know, it's not
Mr.
a shame if I don't. I was going to say it'd be a crying shame if I don't. If I let the women that's in danger, you know, to spend their own money out of their own pocket to try to go across to get an abortion.
Mr. Cordery, what are your thoughts on this tonight?
Thank you. I think it's such an important issue. I know that it's caused a great deal of shock throughout our nation.
Thank you.
I really don't believe the question is choice. I believe the question is, what is life? You know, it wasn't too long ago when my grandson Samuel was born. He was premature. He was 2.2 pounds. I could hold him in the palm of my hand. And when I looked at that little young boy, I thought, oh my gosh, life is so precious. The creator of life was before my very eyes in such a unique way, and I'll never forget those moments. And I think about what it means to possibly have an abortion and decide who decides what is life. Does man decide what is life, or does God decide what is life? I'm not confused about that. God alone chooses and makes life. As a society, we should be actually supporting through the government life. We should be teaching kids abstinence in school. We should be promoting adoption. My wife was adopted. It should not cost $30,000 to have an adoption in Hawaii. Adoption should be nearly free. Should be a gift. Tax policies should support families, should support life. The psychological damage and the consequences of having an abortion, I've talked to a number of women who have never got over it. They still struggle to this day. And I can tell you, even in that, God's grace is enough that sustains them even through that. But I can say, that's something they cannot take back. But God's grace is also enough for a young woman who goes through and has a pregnancy that she doesn't want. Young men need to be responsible. They need to stand responsible for getting a young woman pregnant. So I honestly, if currently abortion is legal in Hawaii, that's a law. Like Len said, governor's the first responsibility is to uphold the law. But if in a season in front of us, the legislative branch, the people of Hawaii speak and decide that abortion should be outlawed in Hawaii, then I would sign that legislation. So that's because I believe strongly that God chooses life, not man.
Let's get to that other recent Supreme Court ruling that could mean big changes to Hawaii's pretty restrictive gun laws. Where do you stand on this issue? Mercy wants to know, what is your position on open carry? Mr. Morgan, we'll start with you.
I mean, within the Constitution, I'm pro-Constitution, I'm pro-Second Amendment, and I've actually had the opportunity, that's one of our constitutional rights. So being able to support that with law-abiding citizens, law-abiding citizens are not the ones who are breaking the laws, if that makes any kind of sense. It's criminals and reform that needs to happen with supporting our prosecuting attorneys, to the correctional officers, to the police, so that we have the resources and facilities in place to support people who break the laws. As far as this, again, the Second Amendment, I'm in favor of it, and that's one of our rights. So being able to support that, I stand for it. And again, law-abiding citizens do not break the laws. So supporting them in these efforts, I'm for it. Putting the support and resources in place for prosecuting attorneys, the prison system, correctional officers, to the police, supporting them when people break the laws is where I think the emphasis should be focused on.
Mr. Cordery, what's your position on open carry? Hawaii doesn't have that currently, but with this new ruling, that could change. What do you think about that?
You know, I think I agree with Paul. I mean, I believe the Second Amendment is something that's codified in the Constitution. I don't believe that we should be changing the Constitution. I don't think that's right for the citizens who don't have a history of gun violence or any violence at all. So I would support the Constitution. I would support the new law. The law, it's not a new law. It just affirms the existing right of the people to bear arms. And so I think when you start to create the Constitution as a living document, it does not serve the liberty for the people. So I would support that decision as an affirmed our rights to bear arms. So that's a great question, but thank you.
Ms. Kahau, what do you say to Mercy tonight?
No, I support the Constitution. But we're in Hawaii, and some of these people down in Hawaii, they gun happy, they trigger happy. So, we gotta be careful with certain things that, we pass. And I only say that only because, okay, so we don't have open carry here, but there are some people that have guns and have shot people, and their guns are illegal. But they just shoot guns. So we have to look at and be mindful. I understand that it's a constitutional right. I want that. But we have to be also mindful, because we do have people out there that are law-abiding citizens, but they don't care at the same time. So we have to be mindful at the same time. But I do support the Constitution as to open carry. It's just we have to be mindful of, of how we put it into a perspective of law. But I do support the Constitution, yes.
And Mr. Mariano, what's your position on open carry and the recent ruling by the Supreme Court when it comes to guns?
Yes, I also support the Second Amendment, and also open and concealed carry. Throughout the military, I've carried open carry, but also concealed carry. So for someone like myself, kind of trained in that, and that's part of like the military aspect. You're trained every year. You have to go through weapons qualification. You have to go through some education, and it's the chain of command that helps kind of enforce the safe mechanism as far as using weapons. We can do that same thing here in the state of Hawaii, and it's all part of education. I think Paul, Gary, and Kahau mentioned it, that we all support the Second Amendment. As governor, again, I'll just keep harping on this. We need to be self-sustaining. We have to be aware of what's happening internationally as well, and then our border security, needs to be upheld. And then same thing, we have our military here on Oahu, but the neighbor islands as well. We need to ensure that our residents are be able to protect themselves, under the Second Amendment. And so having the right to bear arms, either open carry or concealed, is that right? So that should there be an incursion in any of the neighbor islands, we'll be able to defend ourselves properly until, the National Guard or the military can come in and help protect the islands. So having education, making sure that everyone is properly trained, and ensuring that all the guns are registered, is a safe way and a responsible way to do that. Now, you're going to have some individuals that will go beyond that, and that's what we'll kind of deal with that. So again, like what Paul Morgan said, we need to look at the judicial branch, and then sure enough, if someone does a crime, they do the time. And so everyone's innocent until proven guilty. And just because you're a law-abiding citizen and you have open carry or concealed carry, it doesn't mean that you're going to commit a crime. But if that individual does that, then they go through the judicial system, and then we should punish them accordingly.
We started at the top of the show talking about each of your backgrounds and biographies. Very brief, but we have a little bit of a sense of each of you and some of your passions, and also you laid out the issues, the primary issues that you think are affecting the state. But I'm interested in your personal motivations for seeking this seat, because it's not easy to run for governor. It takes a lot of time, a lot of commitment from you. So, Mr. Cordery, I'm just interested, why did you decide to run for governor?
That's a great question. Thank you. Over the last couple of years, I call them the COVID years, but you had mentioned in the introduction that I was a part of AFC. I founded AFC with a number of others. And during that season, people started telling me, you need to run. You should be running for something. You should run for governor. And I literally dismissed it outright as fantasy. I'm a contractor. I'm still working today. And so I just dismissed these things, and I actually was just praying. And I began to realize that these comments made by fellow citizens were actually related to something that God was doing in my heart with regard to what was next. So after I came to the realization that these were connected, I actually saw him. I said, Lord, is this what you're saying? Is this what you want me to do? It's just for me, it's a big shift. And I walked into the house and I said, honey, I think the Lord's telling me to run for governor. And my wife said, yeah, that's right. And it was really that simple. And it wasn't long after that the conversation of how to govern, I just started in this path of reading and studying and reading and studying, realizing, and I began to realize very shortly the changes that were possible, the hope that was possible. But the actually idea to run really was birthed in numerous people telling me, you should run. They knew, they could see who I was, they could see my stand, they could see the integrity, they could see my commitment, and they knew my heart. We met on a regular basis. They knew I was passionate about life. They knew I loved my wife. They knew I loved family. They knew I loved legacy. They knew I loved Hawaii. And after these comments came, I had these profound experiences. I understated it a moment ago. I had 4 profound experiences with the Lord, and I finally said yes. And it was that afternoon that I had made a soft opening, a soft declaration. And honestly, when I did, the people, there was 400 or 500 people there, they jumped in elation. They were weeping, and it was unbelievable. And many said, I was leaving Hawaii until you decided to run. So it was a great affirmation and confirmation, but at the same time, it wasn't a long-term strategic political conversation. So that's the motivation to run.
Ms. Kahau, what's your journey to this moment?
Well, besides me being convicted to my calling as well, February 4th was my birthday. I was supposed to leave to Australia to help Australia's government. And I asked the Lord, I said, okay, so I'm going to Australia. What is my next calling? And it was like, 3 days later, he showed me not to go. And I was convicted of staying. And I ran in 2020 and for my district in 35, Coast City. A lot of people wanted me to run as well, but I was like, no, I'm here. I just want to help on the sidelines, do these contracts, teach people about grammar and stuff. But I used my judgeship, and when I was shown the vision to utilize my knowledge into helping the people of Hawaii in a different way, I was like, I had to fast and pray about it really hard, and that's why I'm here. I'm here to help and serve the people of Hawaii, and that's really why I'm here. I'm convicted to my calling. Thank you.
Mr. Morgan, why did you decide to run for governor?
Well, it's about doing my best and being a part of a catalyst for change in the government of Hawaii. And just with my experiences in education, from working in government services to being a government contractor, and just the volunteer side of being a board member of now the largest community health center in the state, and just seeing the impact of coaching high school kids or officiating state track and field meets, and knowing that we can do so much better, but because things have been run a certain way for so much time, it's just as if, well, okay, that's just it. So considering, my family and my friends, to the point of, would you support this effort to be a part of change, to actually dig in? And running as a Republican, we knew everything about this was all uphill. And despite that, people still said, yeah, we'll support you. Paul, yeah, you. We've been telling you, you've been a leader forever. So just like Gary, getting educated on how it works, the details of it. And in my background as a business development consultant, systems and processes, we know there are instructions in government. And it's about working with people, working with teams, attitude, enthusiasm, those kind of things to inspire people to actually do their jobs. We all know, we all agree that the system is broken. And just hearing from actual government employee, of which I've been one since I've been in the state of Hawaii, we know that there needs to be a change in leadership. So hearing from the constituents, hearing what changes need to be made, we all agree from top down to the issues, all the issues, and we all share that perspective. So knowing that I have the skill sets and have the charisma and have the team mindset and willing to work anybody, even if we don't agree, but it all drills down to the issues and having a 1, 2, 3 ABC approach to the issues without turning people's lives upside down. This is that opportunity. So this is why I'm stepping forward with the support of family and friends.
And Mr. Mariano, why are you running for governor?
Well, it's been a long process. I grew up in Kalihipalama. You know, I also lived on the streets at times. And so I've learned that you can do more through legislation. I served on the first Kalihipalama neighborhood board under Mayor Frank Fossey. And at that same time, I was on other types of committees as well. And, you know, at the age of 21, Governor Ari Oshie appointed me as the West Sub-Area Honolulu's Health Planning Commissioner. And so I did some things there. So I was still going to school at Chaminade University, and then I went to University of Hawaii and got my my commission in the U.S. Army. So I tried to get out of that and stay here in the National Guard so I could pursue a political career. But I was told by Mayor Fossey and also Senator Sparky Matsunaga at that time that, you know, you should stay in the Army, travel the world, learn about the people, the culture, the economic system, and when it's your time, come home. So I did that. So for 35 years, I traveled around the world, wherever the military sent me. And then when I retired, I also did some consulting around the country, doing counterterrorism exercises. And every time I talked to these governors, lieutenant governors, and also some legislators from other states, you know, one of the things they said, you know, you have a leadership trait, and you know, you should run for office one day. And I said, you know, as a matter of fact, that's one of the things that I'm doing. I'm learning on the job. And that's one of those things that makes me, because I've been looking at this aspect and planning it, because Hawaii is my home. And I came home and I'm bringing back all of this knowledge and experience that I've learned throughout the years and studying what the challenges that we're facing here. And for the last 6 decades, it's been the same old rhetoric. It's just talk and talk and talk and just little action. So we move to football maybe 2 yards, but then we take a 5-yard penalty and we go back 10 yards. So Hawaii needs new leadership. We need new direction. I bring that leadership skill set here and looking forward, because I know that we can change things, because we have some great people here in Hawaii. And there is a plan to make the change so that we can make Hawaii not only affordable, but change the destiny so that the light at the end of the tunnel is not a freight train, but it is the light of hope. And so that we can kind of move forward and so that we can prosper. And that's what I bring, that leadership to build us and take us away from the talk into action, into prosperity.
Okay, well, let's get to some of the issues that all of you are referencing. There are 3 questions here, all on one issue, and that's the issue of homelessness. Hilka in Hawaii, on Hawaii Island, says, what is their solution for homelessness and where would they start? Someone from Makaha Valley saying, what would you do about the chronic homeless, the people who don't want help? And another person saying, what is their idea or concept to fix the homeless problem in Hawaii? We talked about affordable housing at the top. That is obviously a portion of this, but there are some specific questions in here, especially on the idea of the chronically homeless. Ms. Kahau, let's start with you on this.
Well, okay, so we have the homeless that are not, they say they're not houseless, they're just living on the beach. That's the ones that want to stay there, right? You know, we have a vagrancy law and it's not being actually utilized in Hawaii, right? So we can't tell them what to do, how to do things, yeah? Mainly if they're, especially if they're mentally, you know, something's wrong mentally. We want to get them help. A lot of the homeless are mentally incapacitated. Something's wrong with them. A lot of them are veterans. You know, we need to get our vets off the streets. And so that plays in a lot of ties. So, you know, for me, I like to help them, and not everyone wants to be living in a house. Not everyone wants to live on the beach either. So I do have a stepbrother who is, you know, mentally incapacitated but, you know, he's in a place where he's in a safe place, and where he lives is a beautiful place. And you know, it's almost as if he lives outside. You know, it's kind of like we can build a place for that. We're in a tropical area, but a lot of the homeless have come from outer states. Now, why is that? Why have we taken in homelessness from outer states? We need to take care of people that's in Hawaii first. A lot of the homelessness is families that are working families, can't afford. So there's one of those issues. So we have a lot of issues and dissect these issues of these families that are homeless, are working families, the ones that are mental or some have kind of mental issues, you know, or just they don't have some kind of skills, so they can't afford it, or on certain, you know, they have a certain amount of income that they cannot pay, you know. We have to worry about our military, that, you know, so many things compound, you know, as homelessness. But I feel for them, and I wish that our vagrancy law is implied, because
Okay.
we do have one.
Well, let's go to Mr. Cordery next on this one, homelessness. How would you best tackle this issue?
Thank you. The way it's being handled now is through the Department of Health. And the reason that we have such a struggle with homelessness is the way that it's handled. The Department of Health sees homelessness as a problem. And what's missing in the process is they don't actually identify who's on the street and why. They take the humanity out of it and make it into a problem. So basically there's four types of people on the street. They've been mentioned a moment ago. There are those that are there just through bad circumstances. Maybe there was a death in the family, maybe there was a divorce, maybe somebody lost their job, a number of circumstances, and they found themselves on the street. Those people, they need assistance from the state. They need a hand up, they need to get back off the street into some kind of a shelter scenario. But then there's people that are taking advantage of the system. They're quite capable of working, and they just live on social benefits. We have social welfare benefits here in Hawaii like no other. Those benefits need to come to an end. If a person's able to work, then those benefits should be terminated. I don't know if it's 90, 60 days. I'm not sure exactly the date yet, but I'm confident that these people actually need to participate in society by working. It doesn't matter what it is, but they have to participate in working. Then there are those on the street who either have mental condition or they're addicted to drugs or alcohol. A lot of these people, they actually need assessment from a medical professional. I'd like to see the University of Hawaii's medical program accredit a course where they actually make assessments of these people and they find programs for them so that they can actually get off the street and find help. My friend does this in California. 25% of the people on the street in California, data statistically, suffer from schizophrenia. This is just a pill. It's an assessment and a pill, and these lives are just changed around before their very eyes. And then it's a maintenance program to stay healthy. And then there's those folks that actually come here with a one-way ticket and a list of where the services are. They come from other states. Our Attorney General needs to get with that other Attorney General in that state and say, enough of this. And these people need to go back home to their families. It's not serving them to be on the street in Hawaii. It's not the long-term solution for them. They need to be in their communities, near their families, and get support there. So it's really a matter of assessment. Even in all this COVID time, when all this money came into the Department of Health, the Department of Health in Hawaii actually reduced the homeless resources for the people. This is unconscionable in this time when so many people are on the street because of COVID and all those things. So we need to fund it, but it needs to be targeted funds. There's a lot of resources that are wasted within these departments, and it's partly because they don't know what to do with it. They don't have an assessment program, therefore they have no plan. Without the plan, they can't move people. So thank you, it's a great question.
I want to just also update the viewers. I'm so sorry on the audio issue. Apparently the issue might be with those of you who are watching in high def, so you can switch over to channel 10, i.e. if you're on Spectrum Cable, just watch in the non-HD, and that should resolve itself. Mr. Mariano, let's go to you on this homeless issue. There was a question specifically about the chronically homeless, interested in that, but also homelessness overall. How do you think that the state can best address this?
Well, as governor, one of the things I will do is I will get with all the county mayors because it's statewide. And, I think Gary and also Kenny, gave some possible solutions as well. And I'm sure Mr. Morgan will chime in as well. But we need to have a long-term, develop dignified long-term solutions. We have to stop doing this whack-a-mole type of solution and these sweeps. That's what we're doing. The Lieutenant Governor, Josh Green, was appointed by the governor to handle the homeless problem. And I don't think he did that very well, particularly doing homeless. So as governor, one of the things, there's two types. When we build these homeless camps or homeless communities, we should also provide the substance that needs to be there for the standpoint of mental health treatment, like a small clinic, or substance abuse, so they can get treatment. You know, some of the camps that I went to visit, you know, they're stuck out there, like out in Sand Island or under the viaduct. And so they're there for a little while. And then if they need treatment, they'll call 911, they get on an ambulance, and then they go to Queens or any medical facility and get treatment. We need to kind of take a look at this holistically and also, you know, do some tough love. You know, when tourists, as Gary mentioned, you know, when they're coming in on a one-way ticket, everyone that comes to the islands, as part of my solution, everyone that comes into the island has to fill up the visitor form, correct? And so what I would do is I would go back and I would change that form and make it even more so where it's kind of targeted to kind of look at those individuals that have a one-way ticket and see where they're staying. And then about an hour or so before, and if it's possible, have them, the airline, send that back to Hawaii so they could do some screening. And as the tourists are coming off the airplane, we can do some secondary screening and find out if they have a one-way ticket, they have no plans, and they're just here, you know, to be homeless. That's we all know that's happening. You know, keep them at the airport, give them another one-way ticket back home. So the homeless problem can be solved. There's books, there's laws in the books that can be enforced. When I was on the neighborhood board, Ala Moana Kaka'ako neighborhood board number 11, you know, there was a big homeless problem at the Kaka'ako Park. So myself and also some of our community members, we went down to the park and we actually talked to some of those individuals that was there. And we found out that there were some individuals that had substance abuse, some had mental illness, and some were just hard luck that they had to work 2 to 3 jobs just to make ends meet. And so since they couldn't do that, you know, they were there at the park. So we had them come to the board, they presented themselves, and then we helped them get acclimated. And majority of them went back to work. So I would put them into work and give them jobs to do rather than just panhandling. If they can be there panhandling, they can go out there and paint graffiti. We could give them work, incorporate that back into society. But thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Morgan, let's head to you on this issue.
There's over 4,800 nonprofits in the state of Hawaii. And we all know that nonprofits are set up to help. I see them being the bridge in my administration and the community to address these issues, from homelessness to houselessness, and just the range of the people who want to get help versus the people who just need that hand up, as I believe Lynn mentioned. And just knowing, you know, from talking with Radical Holly, who it's a nonprofit on Oahu, and this lady, she pretty much uses her personal finances to go out and help the medically fragile, the most vulnerable population in the homeless community, the medically fragile. Sometimes they have a severe disability or they're terminal cancer or whatever that is, but helping put those people in emergency shelters and just creating this task force across the different islands from the range of, okay, this nonprofit has land, so there are camps, so that they can actually just camp there to get them to the point of, you're in this program, and there's actually 2 corporate partners who've decided to be a part of this. Target is one, Walmart is the other, where they actually are able to provide jobs paying at least $16 to $18 an hour. Walmart has a free tuition program that they're able to help people with. So we have the resources in the state. It's just a matter of managing the resources through the nonprofits to do what they do best. They're the specialists. They're the ones who are able to address, Gary mentioned schizophrenia, to whatever mental health issue they are, to support families, to support the individuals who are here in the state. So just working with the task force of these nonprofits, not just a certain few, but all of them who have that mission and are on that list in that 4,800 to do this task force to address these issues, from the ones who are just simply camping on the land to the ones who need the supports once they're in home to sustain a living in the households.
Okay, we have just about a half an hour left, and I got a big stack of questions right here. So I'm going to ask you folks to be just a little bit more brief in your response, not because I'm not interested, but because I want to make sure that we serve our audience and get to as many issues as possible. Mr. Mariano, you know, Hawaii is an overwhelmingly blue state. And so why do you think that Hawaii voters should reach across the aisle and vote for a Republican governor this year?
Well, that's a really great question. You know, one of the things that I think is that every majority of the voters that I talk to, Republicans and Democrats and independents, they're just tired of the same old rhetoric, and they want change. They want new leadership. I've had some Democrats, and they said the reason they vote Democrats is because there was no other good Republican candidate, to go for, except in the lingo, back then. So I'm so encouraged that this is the time now. And so when I put my name in the hat to run for governor, and I'm talking to the voters out there on all the islands, and particularly here on Oahu, they're telling me that I will change and change from Democrat, vote Republican in the primary because you are the guy that we need to have to help lead the state. So yes, it is a blue state, but we can change that because if we continue to do the same thing and vote the same way, one, it's insanity, but two, our inflation and all our way of life is going by the wayside.
Mr.
Right
Cordery,
now,
what are your thoughts on this? How do you feel when the viewers who are asking why they should vote Republican in an overwhelmingly blue state?
Yeah, great question. Thank you. I think people all across the state, whether it doesn't matter if they're Democrat, Independent, or Republican, they all long for a hope. They all long for a new beginning. They are all suffering the same consequences of bad policy. Everybody's thinking about moving. Kids are moving. Families are leaving. Difficult to pay your bills. This is not a Republican or Democratic issue. This is a policy issue, and people long for new ideas and new hope. That's what this campaign is all about, to create an opportunity for people to actually be free and exercise liberty, that we can experience hope and abundance.
Mr. Morgan, what are your thoughts on this? Why should the voters reach across the aisle?
Well, people won't change, and that's what they're saying in the communities. We're all echoing that. And I'm running as a Republican because I did my homework. The only reason the Republican Party was started was to end slavery and just those issues of small government, so that you have freedom of choice in how your life is determined. That's the main reason that I'm running as a Republican. I agree with those values of you are your own person, but collectively working together for all of our best interests and change. That's why, and that's what I'm hearing people say. They won't change, and bottom line, Republican represents that change.
Ms. Kahau, what are your thoughts on this?
Bottom line is to change everything. Never mind the green pill, the red pill, the blue pill. It's time to just take a better pill that changes everything. Enough already. Vote Kahau, because you know how.
Mr. Morgan, I want to ask you start you off on the next question, since you are calling in tonight from Kailua Kona on the Big Island of Hawaii. The next governor will have to manage the issue of the 30-meter telescope atop Mauna Kea. What are your thoughts on whether or not this project should go forward?
Well, I said this a few months ago. I actually opposed TMT, and for all the reasons of there were over 1,400 testimonies that were submitted, and I think those testimonies should be considered. That project should be halted. We have so many projects in the state that don't get the full consideration of the people, of just being back and forth on Oahu. One in particular that's on Oahu is the rail. And the feedback that I get from the people on Oahu is that they feel sorry for the people in the neighbor islands, because they're having to pay tax on a rail that they will never ride. So in those two perspectives, from TMT to the rail and a few other projects, hearing what people have to say before we make those decisions, I think that's a great idea, and it makes all the sense in the world. And as governor, we're going to consider always the people's perspective.
Ms. Kahau, what are your thoughts on TMT?
We got so many telescopes out there anyway. We got everything up there. Why can't first of all, there's a big telescope up there. Why can't they just remodel that one? It's still there. It's usable. Why do you have to dig some more? Just use that. I don't want another big one up there. That one that's already up there goes to Big Ben and it goes to Ireland. It can. So why can't you just, I don't want any more things up there. There's too much stuff up there. Reuse what we have, I don't want nothing else up there, you know, that's just it.
Miss-
Stop building on the land, that's just it.
Mr. Mariano, what's your take on TMT?
Well, I tell you that I'm for building the telescope. I do know that there are some concerns reference the telescope. You know, our ancestors, you know, we follow the stars. I kind of like astronomy. The TMT brings in jobs. It also helps with education. It also helps with building and bridging the Hawaiian culture, particularly out there. Now, there's a lot of miscommunications that's out there. There's a lot of misconceptions that's going on. I don't have all the answers, but I can tell you one of the things that I will do is I will bring everybody in and sit down and have a really good heart-to-heart discussion, because the TMT, you know, is not being educated as well. They provided millions of dollars to OHA to work with the Hawaiian community and to give them the information that they need and to kind of learn about why they're building the telescope and why Mauna Kea. And so the whole world kind of looks at that, and it's all part of that astronomy. Astronauts use it. And so it brings in a lot of high-paying jobs. The University of Hawaii uses it quite a bit. We just need to have better leadership, better management. And then when we turn around and we use that TMT and then bridge that and then portion out some sides so that it can build in for the Hawaiian culture as well. All of these can come into play, and then we can all kind of live and work together, and then we can also prosper in the future.
Mr. Cordery, should the TMT project move forward?
The TMT project is a heartbreak. The problem, I believe the problem with TMT is the fact that the government breaks its promise. It's dishonored and disrespected the people. The Kanaka Maolis, many of them believe that mountain is sacred. And when they first endeavored and initiated this project, they made promises. They said that they would take 2 telescopes down, they would clean the earth. They broke those. That ball was out of bounds then. The opportunity to reconcile was that moment. Then they pushed forward. The next process, the next thing that we saw that was such a great betrayal for the people is Governor Ige's executive order to have these people arrested who were exercising their constitutional rights. Once again, the ball is out of bounds. If the TMT project is to go forward, the government, even I, will stand and we will account to the people for the broken promises. We will actually seek their forgiveness. If there's reconciliation there between the people who live there, who feel that strongly about Mauna Kea and the developers and the government and all those stakeholders, and they can reach an agreement and they can reconcile, then should it go forward? I would leave that up to those people at that moment. I'm not sure about the benefit, honestly, of the telescope, but that's not the issue. The issue is, have we honored our citizens? And until we do, TMT is stuck. So I have mixed feelings about the actual project. I'm heartbroken about the disrespect.
Ms. Kahau, I want to get to you on the issue of legalizing marijuana. It's something that the Ledge has taken up in years past. Right now we have medical marijuana, of course, in the state, but we don't have legalized recreational marijuana. Interested to get your thoughts on whether or not that should move forward.
Recreational, no. I'm sorry. You know why? Because we have CDL drivers out there, you know, and we need people with clear minds, and I don't need nobody driving on the road and eating a brownie or, you know, that's infused. I mean, medical, yes. Recreational, no. You know, there is CBD, and CBD, you need at least 3% of the THC of that plant, so that if your body aches, you can use it, and your body doesn't feel the high. You're not high, but not recreational. You know, as a governor, I would allow people to grow it, you know, to help other people. So, you know, you don't have to just go to a dispensary, but not recreational, because nobody gonna like work. And if people gonna wanna work, they're gonna be high. No, we need people to be competent on, you know, not just on TV, but driving heavy equipment, you know. We need people clear-minded, you know. That's just my feelings. Thank you.
Mr. Cordery, I see you nodding there. What's your thoughts on this?
By personal experience, I can tell you, back when I was 19, it's a gateway drug. Marijuana is a gateway drug. We can try to, suggest otherwise, but there's no benefit to it unless it's medical. I have friends who have cancer. I've had friends who struggle with that, and I think it's so appropriate. It's really assisted them in the last stages of their lives. But recreational marijuana, no. And I agree with Kalina for some degree. We have no way of measuring with alcohol. You take a blood test. When somebody's high from marijuana, you don't know, except for they're slower, their minds are slower, their reactions are slower, but it leads to bad behavior. Your conscience, your senses, they actually relax. You do things that you wish you hadn't later. So this idea of pleasure and medicating from marijuana, no, I can't support that.
Mr. Mariano, what are your thoughts on legalizing marijuana for recreational purposes?
Well, one, I don't smoke marijuana. In the military, we're against that. We always have drug testing that's done on a continual basis. Back when alcohol was outlawed, their prohibition, people were doing that, bootlegging those things. And that's some of the things that we're doing right now. So medical marijuana, I agree that it's needed as long as it's regulated. And then it's also doing it. Now, for recreational marijuana, maybe not at this time, but I will be open to sitting down to listening to all sides, because it is, as I look at the other states that have recreational marijuana, it's a big industry that will bring in good money into the economy. Now, once we have that, then we can earmark those funds, to help to build infrastructure for education, law enforcement, refining and also building things for affordable housing. So, but we can't do that overnight. So if we put programs and processes and procedures, and when the people speak and it goes to the legislature, if it comes across my desk, if it makes sense and the people have spoken, then I would consider it. But if not, then, there's this thing called line item veto, and I can go ahead and veto that, or veto the whole bill altogether and send it back to the drawing board. Okay. But it is another good source of revenue. It's a $1 billion industry. And so why not have it so that we can have another source of income rather than just relying on the military and the tourism for income?
Mr. Morgan, do you agree that this could be a way to diversify the economy?
I do, and I've said this in the past. I'd support it, of course, with regulation similar to alcohol and similar to cigarettes, and also studying the best practices from the states who are actually getting it right, from Oklahoma to Washington and a few other states, because I see it as a source of revenue to the state of Hawaii. We're in over our head as far as our liabilities. So just having that and also exempting certain professions, like where you have charge of children or heavy machine equipment operations or firearms, certain professions would actually be excluded from this, and setting limits similar to a DUI, where blood tests would come into play to be able to test that, and at certain levels as well. So yes, I would be in support with regulation similar to alcohol, cigarettes, and considering the best practices from other states that are getting it right, including the revenue piece.
Let's talk about sustainability. COVID really exposed a lot of weaknesses in our system. Food sustainability certainly was one of them. We were all worried that there wouldn't be enough on the store shelves. Jasmine has this question here. What is your policy solution of agriculture? How will you advocate for the farmers of Hawaii? Clearly, we need to grow more of our own food, so how do we do that? Mr. Cordery, sorry.
Okay.
I was about to go, Gary.
Yeah, me too.
There's medical marijuana right there.
Junk in a pool.
This is such an important question. I think it represents something that's so in everybody's mind when they go to the supermarket. I remember going to the supermarket and seeing medical dairy. I remember seeing local produce, poultry, beef. None of these things are no longer a part of Hawaii's ag industry. They've actually left the marketplace because of bad policy through DLNR and through Department of Health. The fact that the government has the authority and has taken the responsibility to determine which lands are going to be available for production and which are not.
they've actually begun to make it nearly impossible for a local farmer, a local grower of produce to actually have a profitable business. The government actually has the resources to create a market. They do it in part with some school at some percentages of use, but the school should be completely have its foods from locally grown farms and dairies and this kind of thing. And we must have transportation. So DLNR and DOH through regulations, through constraint on the ability to use the land, through land leases, not allowing farmers to invest in their lands, to own their lands. And then we have to have a goods and services ferry, not the super ferry, but a ferry where a farmer on Oahu can move his goods to the Big Island, and the Big Island can bring his beef back to Oahu, and they can do it economically. Currently, if a farmer or a rancher wants to bring their products to a neighbor island, they have to use Young Brothers. There's no profit then. So if you actually create a market, you actually provide the land, you actually use DLNR, and you use Department of Health through regulations, you combine all these changes in policy, and you'll see an ag industry come back into the marketplace, and we will not be dependent on the U.S. mainland or Matson or Costco. We'll actually be able to thrive and have a sustainable ag industry in Hawaii, and that's vital. We must do that. This is not optional.
Mr. Morgan, how do we increase our sustainability here at home?
Well, I was fortunate to attend the ag conference at UH-Hilo a few weeks ago, and coming from the South, I got to see how from cotton to corn to all these different fruits and vegetables actually are rotated on a regular basis. And then being able to hear from a farmer, Michelle Galimba, I believe she's running for an office, but she's also a farmer also. And she made this statement. She said, when the technology meets the farmer, they'll be all over it. From what I understand, the topography of the land and what land is high in iron and low in iron, that's already been done. What needs to happen is to get with the farmers to find out how can we support them. I think Gary mentioned it. The average farmer in Hawaii, the majority of, I think it's 83% of the farmers make only $25,000 a year, and they do not own their land. So having to say to them what they should grow and what they need to grow, the first thing they're going to say is, who's going to help us? So being able to encourage them to have programs that help them increase, because we don't want immigrants coming to Hawaii to do this work. So we got to figure out a way to support these farmers and go on farm to farm to find out what best practices are in place that we can help them through technology and some sustainable ways to help them. That's where we're going to start with this, helping the farmers.
Mr. Mariano, your response to Jasmine tonight on what's your policy solution to support local ag?
Yes, also agreeing with what Gary and Paul was saying. We need to be self-sustaining, and I've been talking about this along the campaign. We need to reinvest in our farmers, our agriculture, and also fishing industry, because we need to have that. Food security is very important. COVID brought this out. We were 3 weeks when the government was entirely shut down. We couldn't have any workers on the docks, and we, even though the unions were pushing Governor Ige to open up the ports so that we could bring the food, because of COVID, everything was shut down. Luckily, they opened up so that the food continued to go. And anytime there's some types of disaster, as you can see some in the spending, the shelves are all empty right away, because everyone knows that you have to survive. So we need to be able to reinvest in our farmers, our ranchers, and also our fishing industry. And so I strongly believe in investing back into them. The Jones Act plays a big role in that, because the Jones Act, right now, if you go on my website, just to let you know that Hawaii is still being treated as the territory. We've been the state since 1959. So if we can modify the Jones Act to recognize Hawaii as the 50th state, all imports can come in here, and we can reduce our tax, particularly on a farming and the industry, 21%. And then also reduce all the costs. They'll bring in competition. We can open up the ports, build the infrastructure, but it all goes back into farming, agriculture, and then also our aquifer as well. So we need to build that type of sustainability, because we can do that. It's sad that we can't grow our own wheat to feed our cattle. We have to import that in. We should be able to do that here in the islands.
Ms. Kahau, what are your thoughts on how we better support local ag?
Well, I'm going to support that 100%. And a lot of the problem is the Hawaiian homes, they have issues like Molokai. A lot of the people up there have 20 to 30 acres, but they only can work 1 acre at a time. So we need to support, our farmers, whether they are Hawaiian homes or not. And I like to bring back, our dairies, our, our cattle industry, because again, our cattle, especially our cattle on the Big Island, they gotta bring in 747 weekly just to bring in, take their cattle back and forth. Why is our cattle going back and forth and then we pay dime on a dollar? We gotta pay the money back for our cattle. That's part of the Jones Act. So we need to have something here, and we put too much emphasis on tourism. We need to change, we need to flip that script and put it into our farming and our people. Start co-ops, give them an avenue so that we can provide nurturing food for our families. And why should we buy avocados from Mexico? We live in a tropical place. We can have fruits and vegetables here, our own food that we can grow, and it'll cut down a lot of this transportation on the barges on each island.
I want to get to a couple more questions. We have less than 10 minutes left, so let's try to be quick on these next few. You just brought up tourism. I'm surprised that we've gotten this far and we haven't talked about tourism specifically. Mr. Morgan, how do we better manage our tourism industry? We got kind of a break from tourists during the lockdowns during the pandemic, but obviously our economy took a major hit on that. So how do we balance the need of Kama'aina while also making sure that the tourists who come here respect where they are?
Right. We've said in our plan, as far as the program of safe travelers, is it actually works. And I hear some of the other candidates from the other parties are starting to hear what we're saying and starting to actually assume it as well. So taking a $25 fee for every tourist who comes to the state of Hawaii, and also getting that education tourism from the planes, the boats, or whatever way that they make it here to know what's expected of them as visitors to the state of Hawaii. And then from there, working with the resorts to different hotels to have a certain number of passes to go to the local beaches so that we don't have that increased footprint in some of the most sacred places and some of the local spots to have that overrun. So basically, it comes down to educational tourism from all the different perspectives, working from the hotel industry to the airlines to the tours to pretty much everything that's related to tourism, and having that $25 fee that comes in that's actually repurposed to assist Hawaii's small businesses in their efforts to start managing and grow.
Mr. Cordery, what of that idea of a tourism tax, if you will? How do you think we better balance tourism, and would you support something like that?
I think the whole tourism conversation is really about revenue. The states become dependent upon the tourist revenue for the general fund. So I believe if we stop promoting tourism in such an aggressive manner and take those resources and start funding the local tour and ag market, then you actually will see a transition in responsibility, but you'll also see the revenue remain the same. You'll see revenue come up in the ag industry, and you'll see revenue come down, but you'll still have balance. And what you'll have as a result is you'll have a tourism base back what it was pre-COVID. Maybe it's 6, maybe it's 7 million, but it was 10 million right before COVID, if I remember right. It was unbearable. You couldn't park on the streets. So can we just stop being so aggressive in our promotion efforts for tourism? Relax those, take those revenues, reinvest those in local industry, and we begin to see this balance out. I think there's a possibility that a tourist comes in and they sign and they donate to some kind of a fund, to an environmental protection fund where they recognize the treasure of Hawaii. I will not mandate that. That's another tax. It's another form of taxation that we don't need. We're already overtaxed to death. But this question of tourism is about revenue.
Mr. Mariano, how do we balance the need of the Kama'aina and the visitors here in Hawaii?
Well, yes, it's a combination of that. We need to kind of phase in the approach. If we're going to limit the amount of tourists that we have every year, we can't just do it overnight, flip that switch. I don't agree with adding an additional tax, having them come on before they even come in, an additional tax just to come in. That's going to drive them away. In fact, taxes are so high on a tourist that they're not staying in Waikiki. They're going elsewhere. They're looking for Airbnbs and they're going to other places around the islands, and they're not staying in Waikiki. So Waikiki is starting to hurt. So they're now trying to say, well, let's go ahead and add these other taxes. Make a long story short, if we were to do that in the next 3 to 5 years, tourists are not going to be coming to Hawaii. They're going to go elsewhere because it's too expensive. It's not just the taxes that we're giving them, but the airlines, the rental cars, everything else. It's just a vicious cycle. We need to stop that. We need to regulate it, but it needs to be a phased approach, a common sense solution, and you need a leader that will be able to help guide that process so that we can enjoy the islands just like the locals.
Ms. Kahau, I'd love to get your thought on this very briefly, and then we're going to get to the last question of the evening. So how do we better balance tourism?
I agree with Lynn. It needs to be a phased approach, but we also need to increase the job and incomes because if our next pandemic comes, we need to have a source of income here. And I'm gonna go back to having, like canning, because we want to be self-sustainable with our food. We need to bring back like our canning companies and pay good money for that, so that we can be our own hub in the Pacific Islands, and then we don't have to put so much emphasis on the tourism industry. But yet tourism can come in, but not as harsh and not as fast. But I don't agree with the taxes, but I also don't agree with too much tourism coming in at the same time. I kind of liked it when Waikiki was empty because it got to flush out all of that, opala that was in the water, but it was kind of nice,
Well, let's get to our last question. And I ask you that you answer this in under a minute, which I know is a challenge, but I know you're all up to it. What's a personal challenge in your own life that you've had to overcome that you think really prepared you for this moment and for this office? Mr. Mariano, we'll start with you.
No, my own personal challenge is the compassion that I have for this island. I love this island so much. This is my home, and I just kind of having a hard time see it change, so that it gets to the point that if I did not have my retirement pension, I may not be living here in the islands. I would have to move out. So my whole thing is having that compassion, for the people. I'm a people person. I'm the aloha. I live the aloha spirit. When I left the islands didn't leave me. I just left the islands temporarily.
Okay, Mr. Morgan, something you've overcome that's prepared you for this moment.
Well, it's just simply, and I'll go back to how I was raised, right? I was born and raised in the 49th or 50th state, as from education to obesity to heart disease, all of these different problems, but having a supportive community that actually encouraged me to do better and focus in that direction of having the supportive teachers all the way through and having coaches who mentored. So being in that position now, running as a Republican candidate for the office of governor in the state of Hawaii, as some may call me the outsider, but others will say, no, bruh, you are just like us. You're one of us because you love the land as well. You love the people. You're here for all the right reasons. So considering that perspective and just being able to pivot it to, it's just about meeting people where they're at, hearing their concerns, and having common sense solutions.
Okay, Mr. Cordery, something that you've overcome that's prepared you for this moment.
I'm 62. When you've lived a life for a season, you've overcome all types of challenges, whether it's in your family, whether it's in relationships, whether it's how to reconcile relationships, how to account for your misses, how to stand responsible, how to keep a promise, how to actually focus on a vision and keep the commitment to see it come to pass. These are all challenges that face people day in and day out. They don't realize the power of going against the grain. I'm all those things, wisdom, just gaining wisdom over the season, betrayal, all of these parts of humanity. And these are the preparation for leadership. So thank you for that question.
Okay, and Ms. Kahau will give you the last word tonight in just under a minute.
Well, dealing with the judicial system, and helping the people with their foreclosures, and it's really, I'm not 62, but I'm 49, but I've gone through a lot, and it's helped me get through this because I gained a lot of wisdom through just the judicial system and I think of the judicial system as their powerhouse, but it's broken and it needs to be fixed. No, really. But that's what helped me get through this because, man, they're ugly.
Okay,
But
well, we'll have to
you.
leave it there. Thank you all for joining us tonight. Of course, we do thank our guests, the Republican candidates for governor, Paul Morgan, Lynn Mariano, Gary Cordery, and Kailine Kahau. Next week on Insights, we have two races to talk about with the candidates in the Democratic primaries for State Senate District 1, which covers the Hilo area on Hawaii Island, and State Senate District 19, which covers parts of Pearl City, Waipahu, and Ewa. Please do join us then. I'm Yanji Denise for Insights on PBS Hawaii. Aloha.